Hi, good afternoon everyone. Right, this is CY again. As you can see in my camera now, I have two roaster from Kaleido set up. Right, today I'm going to attempt to do a manual roast on both machine. Right, on both the M10 Pro and this is actually the M2 standard. So what's going to happen is I will be trying to record the roast profile on the M10 Pro, right, on my Artisan software, and while I try to show you, right, the roasting process for both the M10 Pro and the M2, right. Basically the two machines operate in the same way, right, just that the M10 Pro, right, or the M10 edition is you can see that the size has been upgraded. Right now the bin capacity for roasting is 1.4 kg maximum, right, whereas on the M2 standard or the M2 Pro is only 400 gram maximum. So of course we don't usually roast up to the maximum capacity, right. However, I've tested on the M2, right, the minimum amount of roast should be around 150 gram, right. If you try to roast lesser than 150 gram, right, I think the roasting will be done too quickly, right, because the heat will get to the beans more rapidly, and hence it's a bit more difficult to control the temperature. Whereas for the M10 Pro or the M10 standard, right, the capacity is 1.4 kg. I've tried to roast at 300 grams, right, it ends up terribly. So my suggestion is that the minimum charge amount for the M10 Pro will be at least 400 or 500 gram. Right, for today's demonstration, I'm going to try to roast 500 gram on the M10 and 300 grams on the M2. Right. Once again, this is CY. Right. If you are first time coming to my channel, right, my channel is all about having fun making coffee. Right. As you can see, we are trying to roast on both machines today. Right. You can see that my setting now is indoor. I'm trying to roast indoor to show you that the exhaust, right, is actually bearable, right. Of course, it'll be best if you roast under a ventilated area. However, for today, there was actually a construction site near my residential area, right. So the noise, the digging noise is unbearable. So I have to do the roasting indoor, right. So okay, let me start the Artisan recording. Right, and right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start both machines. Right, you can see that the preheat temperature on both machines is 180 degrees. Right, I'm going to heat up. Right, I'm going to go for 100% first. Right, at the same time, I will also try to start the stir function, right, to maybe about 80%. Right, at the moment the exhaust fan is switched to 0%, right, because I don't want the machine to cool down at this moment. Right, so let's see how long it will take for the machine to heat up. Right, obviously the M10 should be faster, right, because the heating tube inside the M10 is also much larger. Right, of course make sure that your front door is closed, right, otherwise, you can see this door is actually open. Right, make sure that it's closed, locked, otherwise when you load the beans, right, the beans actually comes out from the bottom here, right, which is terrible, right. So right now we are okay, we just have to be patient and wait for a while, right, for the roaster to reach the temperature. Right, the aim, the beans I'm roasting today is actually the beans from Guantamala. Right, I want to do a light to medium roast, which is about City to City Plus. So that's the aim for today. So the roast should be pretty fast. So especially on the M10, I really have to be very careful. Right, I think I will not roast the two beans together. Right, I will let I'll roast on the M10 first, then I'll proceed to roast on the M2, right? Because I think because when I switch to manual, right, it's a bit hard for me to actually monitor both the roasting condition on both sides. And of course, another thing is that make sure that the sample stick, you know, there's a tip here. Make sure this is pointing down, right? Otherwise, there will be bean caught inside this sample stick, right? And it may be roasted unevenly. So make sure this is actually face down, right? Make sure that both of the stick is facing down, right? So this is another tips I can give you, right? This is from my experience in roasting so far. Right, as you can see, the air temperature on the M10 has really reached 150 degrees, whereas on the M2, right, it's only at about 52 to, okay, it's about 65 degrees here. Right, so obviously the M2 will be slower than the M10. Right, that's another difference between the two. So for beginner, right, M2 may be actually more friendly for you to use as compared to the M10. Right, so basically, if you are considering buying the roaster from Kaleido, right, and you can see that between these two models, right, you have to make a choice. If you are just roasting for yourself or maybe for some friends, and you may actually choose the M2 because the size is perfect for home use, right? As compared the size between the two machines, the two machines actually occupy around the same space, right? Of course, the M2 will be slightly taller, right, and M10 is slightly shorter, as well as it's slightly the width will be also slightly narrower. But generally, the space they occupy actually doesn't differs by much. So the consideration will be what's the amount of beans you'll be going to roast, right? If you are roasting for friends and yourself, maybe I think 300 grams will be enough, because by the time you roast 300 grams, you lose about 20% due to moisture. So you will get around 250 grams left, right? So that's perfect. And 250 grams should last you for about 1 to 2 weeks, right? If you drink like 2 cups of coffee a day, right, it should last you about 10 days, right? Each cup, if you do a V60 drip style coffee, each time you use about at least 20 grams of coffee beans. So that will last you about 10 days, right? Sorry, less than 10 days, in fact, if you do 2 cups a day, right? Okay, so I think the M10 is already ready. So right now, I will be reducing the heat because I don't want to continue heating at so high. I want to roast it slowly, so I'll be reducing the heat to 20%. Right, and now I will be loading the beans for the right. I'll be loading the beans on the M10. Right, and on my Artisan, once I charge the beans, I will start to press the timer on the manual screen, as well as my Artisan. Right, so okay, let's do it. Right, so you can see now there's a drastic drop in the bean temperature, right? Of course, the bean is cold, right? And the RR is actually negative 89, right? That's perfectly normal, right? At this stage, the bean is gaining thermal energy, right? So it's trying to heat up the beans, right? Right, as you can see on the M2, right, the bean temperature, the air temperature is now 128 degrees Celsius, right? So it will still take a while for the temperature to increase. Right, I can see that there's a turning point already, right? On my Artisan software, I can actually see the turning point. Okay, just to show you what's actually going on, right? This is actually what's going on my Artisan software. I'm actually recording the roasting profile as we go, right? So later on, if this is a successful roast, I can actually use this profile to continue do the same roasting. I can actually, this is what we call the Autorose function, right? And this is what the M10 Pro offers you, right, at the moment, right? So you can do auto roast, record the profile, and repeat the profile later on, right? So now the RR is still quite high, right? It's 11, right? So I will want to, actually my heat is already the lowest, right? Let me check. Right, the bean is still green, right? So I think should be okay for now. Okay, our RR is dropping slightly. Right now, the roasting time has just passed about 2.5 minutes. Let's check the beans again. Right, it's not turning brown yet, so still have some time to go. Now if I check the M2, right, M2 now is at about 151, 152 degrees Celsius. Right, so still have quite a long way to go. So comparing the speed, definitely the M10 has the advantage. However, M10, to use the M10, you have to roast at a higher capacity, right? You cannot do like 300 gram roasting or anything lesser than that. So this is the main thing you have to consider, right? Some of my viewers, right, asked a question on the M10 and M2, right? Both roaster use a standard home power, right? Which means in Singapore, we're using 13 amp and 230 volt of electrical supply, right? In US, I think you'll be using 110, right? There's no problem with both M2 and M10 to be used in Singapore or the US or Europe. And it doesn't use special, it doesn't require any special power changes or whatever, right? It is not like those commercial coffee machine whereby you need a special ampere for the power plug, right? Both roaster actually can support home power supply, right? There's no issue on that. Right, as you can see, the beans now is turning yellow, right? So, and I can smell a very pleasant smell now. Yep, the smell is the nice roasty smell of the nutty kind of smell. It's very good. Let me check. Right, as you can see, right, I hope you can see that. Right, the beans is turning darker brown, right? From light brown, it's changing to a slightly darker brown. Now the M2 is reaching about 167 degrees Celsius for air temperature. And M10 has already started roasting for about 6 minutes. I think the drying has already completed. And I should be hearing the crack pretty soon. So I'll be getting my Artisan ready to record the first crack. Okay, let me show you the condition of the roast now. Okay, I can hear some cracking. I'll be waiting for the repetitive cracking before I press the first crack. Nicely roasted now. Okay, I can hear the first crack. So first crack started at about 187 degrees. At this point, I will be venting out the air at about 40%. Okay, once the bean reach about, actually, you know what? I think the beans is more or less ready. Right, I think this is the type of roast I'm actually achieving. I'm trying to achieve. Right, I will probably drop the beans now. Now I'll start this cooling. So now you can see the smoke, right? I'm not too sure whether it can be captured on the camera. Right, so I have recorded the profile on the Artisan. Right, let me show you. Right, the profile has been recorded. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to sample the coffee. Okay, now all the 4 fans are on. Right, there are 2 additional fans here, right, which the M2 doesn't have, and 2 additional fans inside. So the cooling is actually quite rapid. Okay, let me get some sort of a spoon, right? Right, to cool it down. I will show you the quality of the roast later on. I think this is a very successful roast, right? But I'll be very excited to taste how it tastes like later on. Oh, it's still a bit warm. Okay, I'm just going to leave it inside for a longer while. Right, sorry about the fan noise, it's pretty noisy. Right, so now I'm going to save the profile. Right, this is just a city roast. Okay, let me show you the roast condition of the beans. Okay, let me move the camera closer. Right, that's the condition of the roast. Okay, I'm going to shut down the machine. Right, so now I'll be allowing the machine to cool down, right, while I do the roasting on the M2. Right now, the M2 is reaching about 175 degrees Celsius, right? Make sure everything is locked, right? And I'm going to drop the temperature. So now I'll be resetting the curve, right? Same thing, I'll be reducing the heat to 20%, right? So that I can slow down the increase later on. Alright, okay, so now let me drop the beans.